Hey guys, thank you for stopping by at the beginner's mind with that fig tree. Consumer insight industry is at crossroads. The budgets are shrinking. Artificial intelligence is badly disrupting the industry. The industry is not what it used to be. I talked to Brett, who is a senior consumer insight professional with companies like Electrolux, Pepsi, and Walmart. He shares the pain. We talk through industry's pain points. Brett and I go through some of his case studies from Electrolux and Pepsi, where he shows how he brought data, insight, and decision making together. You can check out Brett's book, Insights on the Brink, Revitalizing the Market Research and Analytics. Hope you find it insightful, both the episode as well as Brett's book. For such meaningful conversations, do follow the channel. Okay, thanks, Brett, for joining us, giving time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think your book, you've been in inside industry for so long. What's ailing the industry?
I think our past is ailing us, to be honest. We have a history, our industry was created decades ago by clinicians and academics who really cared more about process and methodology than they did business results because they weren't businessmen. And so they were never responsible for managing a product or branding or innovation or anything. It was more about proving the validity of their methodologies. And so I think that has been handed down through the decades where our industry tends to be more focused on methodology and process and instead of actual business results. And so I think it's got us to a point where we care more about data than profit. We care more about numbers than insight. We haven't really taught people how to have empathy and be truly consumer centric. And so and we don't move very quickly. There could be an argument, and there is an argument about making sure we have the right data and data quality and doing things the right way. But we don't have months anymore to do research. Business doesn't move at that pace. And we have to realize that we have to evolve and we have to adjust as an industry because of the way that we have focused too much on things like sample sizes and methodologies, and we've trained our constituents to feel the same way. Uh, it's almost as if they don't really see a need for us anymore because we're not delivering what they need. And so I really feel like we're at a crossroads where we have to evolve the industry and adjust and become better, or we're going to continue to see what's happening now where we're seeing budget cuts and headcount cuts, and in some drastic cases, entire consumer insights departments being let go. And it's because senior leaders don't see the need to pay for something that they don't feel they're getting value from.
Yeah, I think it's a bit surprised. Look, we all think the insights are very important. You are a teacher, and I have taught in business school as well, and done senior level presentation. Everybody says, "Oh, consumer is important, insights are important." But whichever company you go to, I've seen the insight budget being part of the cost function. Not It's
Mhm.
not considered as the investment. And have you've been on insight side, client side many times? How did you feel about it?
Yeah, it is mostly put as non-working dollars or, as a cost center. And I think that's our fault, as an industry. We have not shown our value or fought for that. It was for the very first time when I was at Electrolux in the US, my CMO and I put basically a proposal together for the CEO to say, hey, at least allow the money that we're putting towards innovation and developing new products to be counted as working dollars and as an investment rather than a cost center. And we had gone through the last couple of years of the money that we had spent on innovation showed what the result was in terms of sales and profit, and showed, hey, we are contributing to the bottom line of this company. Any money that you put towards innovation is working dollars towards the bottom line of this company, and we got that approved. And so I think, one, we have to fight for it, but more importantly, we have to show our value. We have to show quantitatively that we are contributing to sales, that we are contributing to profit, and we're contributing to the success of the business. And I do think there are leaders that are willing to have that conversation and be open to it. We just aren't having it. Maybe we're scared to, maybe we don't feel like we have justification to. But if we're doing our job correctly, then I think that's a easier conversation than people think it would be.
And what are the way you're proposing to shift or to help the industry which is at crossroad or to reverse the decline? I mean, I know it's a big job, it's a big ask.
Wow, that's a big question. I think I've kind of said it already a couple of times, but I think we have to be sales focused.
Okay.
In my teaching at universities and when I'm speaking, I will sometimes ask students or ask the audience, what is the role of insights? What is the ultimate goal? And I get all kinds of answers. And if it's anything other than to help companies make money, then that's the wrong answer because that's why we exist. Companies pay us salaries and create these departments and give us budget money because they think that understanding the consumer, they think correctly, understanding the consumer will lead to the business being more successful. And so if we're not delivering on that, then what happens is what we're seeing is that budget cuts and headcount cuts and things because when things start to get bad and they start to look for cuts, they don't cut things that they feel are valuable or that they feel are contributing. They cut things that they feel they can do without. And so if we haven't proved that we are vital to the money-making part of the business, then we're going to get cut. So I think that's the first thing is we have to be sales focused. We have to literally be focused on making companies money. And I know that might leave a bad taste in people's mouth, but it's true. I mean, I've been doing this a long time. I've been in C-level meetings and have heard all of the stuff. And there's no other number one goal that we should have other than sell more stuff. But in order to do that, we have to do several things. So it starts with a mindset shift, but then we have to do a better job of delivering great stories and insights, not data and information. We think that data are insights and they're not. We think that charts and graphs tell stories and they don't. A great story starts with conflict. All the best stories that are out there start with conflict. Like Luke Skywalker would be a very boring hero if not for Darth Vader and the dark side. That's what makes that story the story of Star Wars so compelling and any other story for that matter. So many insights people aren't looking for conflict. And if we aren't identifying the consumer conflict and the problems they have, then we have no story. And we're just talking about things then that aren't really insights that are just common knowledge that people talk about all the time that really aren't insights. And so we have to really understand conflict, and the conflict is the heart of every great story. And we have to learn how to tell the consumer conflict in a way that garners empathy within the company. It's empathy that drives problem solving and us wanting to help people. And then we're not just creating products, we're creating solutions because we feel for that consumer who's going through that conflict. A really great example of that is when I worked at the dollar store business in the US when I was at PepsiCo. And we spent some time with consumers who do most of their shopping at discount dollar stores, not even at major grocery stores, but at discount dollar stores. And some of the decisions that these families had to make every month was, do I put gas in my car or do I eat? Do I pay my electric bill or do I buy groceries? And we found that they were always at least 1 month behind on all of their bills because it's like, well, this month I'm going to pay the electric bill. Next month I'm going to pay the gas bill because we have to eat and we have to pay rent. So we have a place to live and we can survive. And so that understanding of their conflict really garnered empathy within our organization that allowed us to come up with solutions to help them, not just try to sell them another product. So I think that's part of it. And then and there's so many different things, but I think those are probably the biggest two that I think we as an industry need to be better at.
Yeah, no, I get it. I'm in full agreement with both. But at times, quantifying the impact is not so easy. That's a thing which I have felt myself because there's a lot of work which is done at the qual level, right? Exploratory work and all that, and quantifying the impact of that is not so easy. And that's a challenge I faced many times. myself.
Yeah, and I think part of that is because we've conditioned people who are not in our industry to expect large sample sizes. I mean, some of the best insights work I've ever done that has led to some of the most meaningful change has been qualitative work. And I think we have to, again, that's part of our evolution is getting away from this thought that we have to have large sample sizes and that we have to do surveys for everything in order for anything to be valid. Because some things, like, with appliances, it's all behavioral. How somebody cooks dinner, how somebody does their laundry. They can't answer that in a survey because
Mm.
there's so many things that we realized when we were watching consumers do laundry and cook dinner and things like that, that they just do instinctively and they don't really know how to talk about it on a survey or they don't even think to talk about it. And so I think we have to get over the fact that we have to have quantifiable things in order to recommend results or recommend a certain direction or something. And so we can do that fine with qualitative work. And we just have to, again, adjust people's mindset and adjust people's thinking. And then on the back end, we can quantify how successful it was based on the products or the uptick in awareness or whatever the KPIs of your company are. But I think that's part of it right there is thinking, oh, well, we've got some really good qualitative work here, but we can't just recommend something based on that. We have to go do some big, large study. And I would say, no, we don't need to do that.
Yeah. I get what you mean. Now, you've had so much of very rich experience, Brett, across various organizations. Let me talk about one of the things. Talk about one of your how you rebuilt Frigidaire, brand in US in North America. Is that
Yes.
how did like walk us through that?
Yeah, so Frigidaire is the main brand owned by Electrolux in the US. And when I got to Electrolux, there was people knew that the brand needed some work, but we weren't really sure where to start. The company was kind of a fast or slow follower, depending on that with technology. We were just kind of copying what a lot of other people, what a lot of competitors would do. And it had been a while since we had come out with something that was truly innovative. And so it started with the consumer. Like we had to understand who are we actually targeting? And because it's a value brand sold in mass channels, it was like, well, our target is families, but it was too broad. Our message was too broad and it wasn't really hitting at what truly our target consumers conflict was. So we did some really great consumer work to really identify who is that consumer that we're going after, and not from a demographic standpoint, but from a persona standpoint, and
Mm.
really understand this is our target consumer, not a segmentation of 5 different consumer groups, because we didn't have a $50 million marketing budget to be able to market to 5 different segments. So we
Mm.
picked one. We just said, here's who we're going after. This is our target consumer. Here's what she and he look like. This is what their family looks like. This is what they're interested in. These are the subcultures that they belong to and how active they are in those, and really kind of profiling who this person is, and then especially the conflict. What is the conflict? So I think once we did that and got people on board with this is the message, this is what our brand needs to stand for, then the second thing we did, which you and I kind of talked about earlier, about something that was very uncomfortable for the company, was that the thought was is that everything is price driven and that people buy appliances simply based on price. And we knew that wasn't true intuitively because then everybody would buy the cheapest refrigerator we sold
Mm.
if it was just purely based on price.
Mm.
The first real uncomfortable insight we found was that design is what drives purchase decisions. It was the number one factor into purchase decisions. And we went through a really long process to understand emotionally how that is. And because it's a very emotional thing, it's not something that we tap into very easily. And it doesn't come out on surveys for sure. But once we figured that out and then we're able to also quantify it, had a little bit of backlash internally, but we just explained, we simply put it as, hey, price is an issue, but it's because consumers set a budget. And then once they set the budget, then they try to find the best looking, most beautiful appliance they can find because it's going to sit in their kitchen and they have to look at it every single day. And it says something about who you are when people come into your kitchen. And so that was really the first uncomfortable thing that we uncovered. But what it led to was an emphasis on design. And yes, we can be a mass value brand, but it doesn't mean we can't look pretty.
Yeah, yeah.
And so what we did was we invested in design and really started designing some very beautiful looking appliances without moving the price point up into the luxury area. And what happened was the company did and still continues to win Red Dot Design Awards. A number of the appliances we made, we couldn't make enough of them because of how we put it together. And so I think it's just understanding, going back to what I've said before, we figured out who our consumer was and what their conflict was, and really so much about them that we could target them and talk to them, even in the right tone. So, one of the other things about appliances, especially washers and dryers, and dishwashers, is so many other of our competitors were showing the mess. They were showing the kids rolling around in the mud in their clothes, or they were showing really dirty dishes. And we found out our consumer, yes, that was happening to them, but they didn't want to see it. It was like the consumer was like, we don't want you to hold a mirror up to us and show us how chaotic our life is. Just show us how you can help resolve it. And so that's what we did. So the tone that we took was a different kind of tone. And we showed different things. We didn't show the mess. We showed how it was going to help them. And so I think and this wasn't all overnight. This took months and even like a couple of years for us in a progression to get to this point. But it was something that then turned around this brand and made it relevant. Because one of the things when I got there was they're like, we need you to help us with the brand because it was a 100-year-old brand and current consumers, younger consumers didn't think it was relevant for them. They
Mhm.
thought it was their mom's or their
Mhm.
grandma's refrigerator, had no relevance to them.
Mhm.
But all of this work started to show this is a relevant brand for you. And especially if you have a family and this particular type of family that we were going after. And so we started to see consideration go up. We started to see sales go up. And there was just this turnaround of this 100-year-old brand that all of a sudden seemed new and fresh again and had all sorts of really great results financially for the company because of that.
Yeah. No, I think very interesting story. I think coming back to, younger consumer thinking that the brand is for the mothers or grandmothers or whatever. I think I've seen it very consistently in legacy brands. Any
Hmm.
any legacy brands, I mean, I've worked on FMCG industry most, and I found, let's say, brands like, you're aware of Lux, like Lux, Ponds, these are some
Hmm.
FMCG brands and, very popular in our times, but now I think having struggle and the same struggle they are having, that, they're being more associated with the older generation and not with the younger generation. Now, I just want to understand from you on what success measures, what did you take? You said consideration. I think getting a bit researchy here. Pardon me for that. You took
No, it's fine.
consideration and you took sales. What other measures?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of the book Moneyball. It's a book about baseball analytics in the U.S. It was written about a baseball franchise in the U.S. Named the Oakland A's, and
Okay.
about how they were an underfunded team compared to other baseball teams, and how their general manager Billy Beane had to use
So there's a
analytics
movie on that
basically.
also on
Yeah,
Netflix,
there
is
was a
it?
movie. They made it into a
Yeah,
movie
yeah.
with Brad
Oh, then I
Pitt,
should
right?
watch it. Yeah, yeah.
Right. And so the whole crux of that movie in the book boils down to there were so many statistics that you could find in baseball, so much data. But most baseball people were using the wrong data to evaluate players. And so I've kind of and we actually got to meet Billy Beane when I was at PepsiCo. We brought him in to speak to our insights group, and
Oh,
we got
wow.
to talk to him and ask him questions, and it was just fascinating to really hear that. And so ever since then, I mean, it wasn't just an entertaining book and movie. It really changed the way I looked at analytics. And the point was is that for us in consumer insights and in business, we everybody says the same thing. We have more data than we know what to do with.
Mm.
So the point is to find the right metrics, the right KPIs,
Mm.
not
Mm.
just throwing a bunch of data there, which
Yeah.
is the whole point of the book. And so when we got to Electrolux, the things that the data or the KPIs that most insights people look at is unaided awareness or
Mm.
aided awareness and
Yeah,
some of
true.
these other things. Well, again, through the work that we were doing with consumers, and I think this is, let me back up. Another thing about consumer insights is that sometimes we get so narrow into thinking, oh, we're only going to solve this one problem, that we don't open ourselves up to when we are investigating a certain issue and consumers start to talk about something else, we kind of shut it down and say, well, that's not the questions that I was asking.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the things that I've really trained my team and that I learned on is let them talk. Let
Mm.
consumers talk because who knows what we're going to learn from this.
Mm.
So this was one of those instances where through the discussions that we were having with consumers, where it wasn't necessarily the main point of the topic, was we found out that most people, when it comes to buy a new refrigerator, you haven't bought a new refrigerator in 10 years, 15 years. So you don't really know. It's not like buying food or even a mobile phone. Most people only keep their mobile phones for 2 or 3 years. Most people keep their cars in the US at least for only 5 years. And
Mm.
so it's interesting that people are more they know more about buying cars than they do about appliances when cars are much more expensive and have
Mm.
a lot more going on. So when we were talking to these people who were starting to buy appliances and starting to get into the market to buy a new appliance, we found out that when they start the process, there's generally about three brands that they have in their head that they're going to look at
Okay.
and that they're going to shop because it's too overwhelming to start fresh with 15 different brands and try to narrow it down there. So it's just through experience or word of mouth or reputation or whatever. There's three brands that they start to look at, and most of the time the purchase they made was among one of those three brands. So we called it top three consideration. And we realized we got to get into the top three. That's the key metric for us. That was like in Moneyball, the first real metric that they started to latch onto was on base percentage, not batting average, not anything else. It was how often do you get on base? Well, for us, it was how often are we in that top three consideration? Because
Okay.
one of the things, when we started to measure this and dive into a little deeper, we found out that we weren't very good about getting into the top three consideration, but when we did, our closing rate was better than any of our competitors. So it wasn't closing the deal, it was getting them to consider us. And
Mm.
so, and then a lot of the advertising we were doing was kind of at the bottom of the funnel whereas we needed to be more at the top of the funnel. And
Okay.
so we started to change our marketing
Mm.
strategy to attack people, not attack, but to try to get to consumers at the top of the funnel as the beginning or even right before they start shopping for a new appliance, not after they've already gone through the process and we were talking to them down here. And so again, through smart investments in marketing and understanding that KPI, we were able to increase our top three awareness and therefore increase our sales because our close rate held fairly steady even when we increased our top three consideration rate. And so that was the one metric we uncovered that was different than how we had looked at it before, but it changed the way that we attacked our marketing.
Yeah. So I think just a lateral view on this. Have you kind of read through the buy and shop work and all that stuff? Buy and
I'm sorry, which book?
buy and shop is talks about how brands grow.
Oh,
No,
yeah, I'm familiar with that.
do you have a view on that kind of thing, or because he's also into penetration game. He's not into typical segmentation or typical
Yeah.
type.
There it becomes a philosophical discussion. It's not like I think segmentations are bad or
Okay.
anything like that. I think it just depends on what your philosophy is, and I think do to a lot of depends on your budget, to be
Mm.
quite frank. Because some people do these really expensive segmentations and come up with 4 or 5 segments, but they don't have the money to really attack them. So then we just spent all this money on a big segmentation. We're really only going to talk to one segment. Well, you could have done that from the beginning for a lot cheaper if you would just try to focus on the one that you were doing. So, it like I said, I don't think there's anything that's right or wrong. It's what's best for your company culture, what's
Mm.
best for your internal politics, what's best for your budget. So yeah, I think that's more of a philosophical
Okay.
thing rather
All
than something that I feel is like, oh no, we shouldn't be doing this or doing that.
right.
Like,
Okay. That's
at
very
Walmart now,
academic then, yeah.
yeah, like at Walmart, we have a segmentation. So it's not as if segmentations are bad, and I'm working on some things right now with that, but it's it's segmentations aren't bad. It was just at what we were doing at Electrolux, we opted to do something different in that situation.
And what is like, how did you kind of rally the troops around? Stakeholder management is not easy. I mean,
No,
and everybody has its own agendas. And I see it at Electrolux itself. You got some, you were able to release some media investments about $5 million and change the leadership mindset. And how did
Mhm.
you manage that? Just talk about few instances, where you were cornered, but you come out.
Sure. Um, Really, it goes back to what I said towards the beginning, is we told very concise, short stories.
Okay.
We didn't go up there with presentations with data charts and graphs and everything else. We went in with a conflict. We said, here's the problem that our consumer is facing. Here's how we can solve it. And yes, we backed it up with data. But the point is that and we didn't we didn't show the same presentation to every single group in the company
Okay.
because innovation or product development, they don't need to know everything that sales needs to know or that senior executives need to know or something. So we tailored our presentations depending on what was important for that group to understand. And then it's a lot of it's building relationships. It's bringing people along with us. Insights people historically like to go off and we do our own things and then we come back with the results and we haven't brought people along with us on that journey. And so it's almost kind of a shock to their system if we come back with something that's really different and they haven't been briefed along the way. And
Mm.
so by the time when we got to, and this wasn't just at Electrolux, we did this at PepsiCo and in other places where I've been, where we bring those people along with us. We don't go away for a month and then come back and say, here's your
Yeah,
results.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
We talk to them about it. We involve
Continuous
them.
dialogue, journey, take them through the journey.
Yep. And we do a good job we do a good job of building relationships and understanding, what does sales need to get out of this? What does product development need to get out of this? We learn their businesses. I think, I require all of my teams to all the people on my team to go to the business meetings of these people that we work with so we understand the business and we develop much better business acumen. I learned that from an old PepsiCo, Frito-Lay CMO, Ann Mukherjee, who said, we need to know the business cold. And that was something that I kind of carried with me is that we can't be the best proactive insights people if we don't know our own business. And so we knew what was going on in product development. We knew what was going on in sales. We knew what was going on in all the different parts of the company. So we knew what their concerns were. We knew how to talk to them. We knew how to be proactive in finding solutions because we knew what was going on in the business. And we knew how to prioritize because we knew what the business priorities were. And so we weren't wasting a lot of time and money doing things that didn't ultimately matter to the business. And so it was developing those relationships, showing them that we knew their business and we understood them and that we cared about them. It was being, using influence and really trying to be persuasive in what we're doing. And then ultimately, like I mentioned, we just told very concise stories that told the problem and told the solution and then the why, you know. And
Okay.
so there's a phrase that I love is like the what informs, the why transforms. And so we focus so much on the why
Mm.
that people couldn't help but get it. And then again, in these stories, we helped people feel the pain of the consumer. And then that got them to start to be understanding because there's no empathy in data. You put up a bunch of data and there's no empathy there. There's no emotion there. And the whole goal that we said was we want every time we presented something about the consumer, we wanted people to feel something. Not like we're trying to bring people to tears or anything like that, but we just wanted them to feel what the consumer's feeling. And if we did that, then we were usually successful in kind of achieving what we
Mm.
want. But again, it's a process. It's not just something that you can
Yeah,
just
yeah.
turn a key and start doing. You have to build those relationships and you have to learn the business and you have to be persuasive and do all those things. But when you do and it all comes together, that's how you make things happen.
Pretty much like a surfer, how a surfer surfs through the waves. I mean, you kind of,
Right. Well, and then to your point about how did we unlock extra marketing funding? Well, what happened was with the Frigidaire brand, when senior executives started to see, wow, this new approach you're taking to this consumer, this new story you're telling, this thing that you're doing, we're really seeing the results of that. So we're going to give you more money to do more marketing because we know that you're going to spend it wisely telling this great story, and it's going to end up bringing in more money, which it did.
yeah,
But we had to prove ourselves. We had to show that we really knew what we were doing, and and at the time we had a really great partnership between marketing and insights, and we were really just we're saying the same, speaking the same language, telling the same story throughout the building, and it was one message that was going out to everyone that everybody could agree with.
nice, very good stories. Now, maybe I can ask this question later or ask you now. I mean, I've had a lot of experience with brand trackers.
Yeah.
What's your like? And they're hot and cold. Sometimes they are good, sometimes, and it's like with brand trackers, I found like a very difficult marriage. You can't
Mhm.
live with it, you can't live without it. you know is what's as a user
Yeah.
and with interacting with C-level executives, what's your view on that?
I To be quite frank, I hate them. I
Mm.
hate them. I hate brand trackers. I hate NPS
Okay.
because it's static data. It's
Mm,
just a number. It doesn't tell us anything. It's
mm,
just it just is a number. And I understand senior executives want them, they need
mm.
them for
Scorecards
trade
and all.
calls and earnings calls and things like that. And so it's like you said, you can't live with them, can't live without them. But I do feel like there are right and wrong ways to do it because I think inevitably you're going to have to do them.
Mm,
But I think one, we don't have to do it as often as we think. I mean, I've seen brand trackers that are measuring weekly. I'm like, people's attitudes don't change over a week
mm,
unless something drastically goes wrong or something drastically goes right,
mm,
one of the two. But
mm,
that rarely happens. So I
mm,
think we can really decrease the cadence to
mm,
when we are sampling that because brand trackers eat up so much of a consumer insights budget
mm.
because they're so big, they go on throughout the whole year, and then we don't have money to do what's really important. And
Exploratory research
so
and all
and
this.
so I'm big on, they should never happen, in my opinion. Again, this is a philosophical
Sure,
thing.
sure,
I'm just going to
understand.
tell you my
Absolutely.
philosophy
Yeah,
is
yeah.
that they should never happen more than quarterly. And usually for some brands, it's twice a year or once a year is really all you need. And because then you can actually see differences. You can track things. If you're tracking weekly, it looks like this.
Mm,
I mean, you don't see anything. So that's, I think, the first one. And then the second thing is you have to be able to tailor a brand tracking or an NPS with the ability to understand why you're seeing what you're seeing.
mm,
Because if you see, okay, we have this type of brand awareness or this type of NPS score, our NPS score is 27. Okay, why? Why is it not lower? Why is it not higher? What is it that we're doing right? What is it we're doing wrong that's leading to that? And so if we don't have an ability to be able to make recommendations as to why we're seeing what we're seeing, then what good is it? And so it's decreasing the amount of data we collect, and it's also structuring them where we're also getting a why element. Now, it can either be within the same research, or we can use, I know you probably want to talk about AI here in a minute, but there's so many really great AI tools that we can use to understand voice of consumer and social media sentiment and all these other things where we can scrape and learn and we can get some understanding as to why we're seeing what we're seeing. So whatever it is we're doing from a brand tracking or an NPS standpoint, we have to be able to explain why this is happening.
Yeah.
So
No,
those are my two big things. I mean, I'm very strongly opinionated about it, and I've had a lot of fun debates with people who think,
no,
oh,
no,
we got to do
you're
it
right.
weekly for this reason, but I'm like, no, we really
But
don't.
one thing, coming from agency side, I can tell you, and we are kind of a smaller setup compared to other big ones.
Hmm.
That those having brand trackers are doing well. Those companies doing
Oh,
brand trackers are doing well because it's a
it's
consistent.
great money for an agency.
They're making money. They're the companies where private equity likes to invest because it's a repeatable business.
Hmm.
So it's a very strange situation that, it's a necessary evil, I would say it's a bit of a necessary evil. It's killing a lot of
It
interesting
is.
projects, but it's pretty much there.
But it doesn't give us any of the whys and any of the consumer understanding. There's no emotion, there's no empathy. It doesn't really, what I have found is that it doesn't lead to anything other than just more questions if you don't do it right.
Yeah,
And so I would rather be able to do it and answer the question and answer the why question, are we seeing this? And then to already have solutions in hand ready to say, and here's what we're doing about it already, or here's what we're going to go do about it. If we're just doing brand tracking, just doing NPS, we don't have any of that.
yeah, that's true. That's true. Uh, I'm in agreement with you. I mean, I've done brand tracking, a lot of brand tracking, and sometimes it can throw very interesting results, but sometimes people end up making data. There
Oh, that's all it is.
that after a while, after a couple of years or couple of quarters, it's like making a story, and it's borderline unethical, but I've seen that happening quite a bit.
Oh, I feel bad for agencies that have these big brand trackers where you don't see barely any movement in the data, and you're expected to analyze that and come up with a story. It's like, it's impossible. Like you said, it's
And you,
so
you want to
hard.
make sure that the budget keeps coming and it gets repeated, and so you try to push those buttons of the data which don't even exist. To yeah, I've seen that happening, and it's pretty sad, but it's just dark reality.
Well, I've even seen a number of insights agencies here in the US that just stopped doing them because it was so frustrating. And yes, it brought in revenue, but it was
Mm.
so frustrating to do them. And they didn't feel it was making any difference. And they figured we can be putting these resources into doing much better insights that really help companies rather than just throw more data at them. And
Brave of them.
they just got out of that business altogether.
Brave of them. If they could live without that revenue. Uh, yeah, I've seen one interesting thing in your career that you moved from CPG space, right, to the electronic space, durable space. Is anything changed for you in terms of looking at research, in terms of methodologies, or?
Yeah, I'm not really a big methodology person. I mean, that's one of the big things that we say in the book is that we're too hung up on methodologies, and that should be the last thing we talk about and not the first thing.
Hmm.
So I'm very method agnostic. I'm very fluid. My whole thing is how do we answer the question? How do
Hmm.
we solve the problem? And so moving from FMCG to durables, there were obviously some differences. The lead times were a lot longer with
Hmm.
technology than with fast moving goods, and we could churn out something at PepsiCo fairly quickly, whereas at Electrolux it took a little longer, obviously.
Hmm.
Um, but we did a number of the same types of things. What I would say one of the big difference was in appliances, I mentioned earlier, it's highly behavioral. And so we did a lot more in-home, a lot more qualitative work to understand the behavioral side of using appliances and allowed us to really uncover some
Hmm.
habits or some workarounds that people had developed
Home widgets, all that.
that we were able to innovate around and create
Hmm.
solutions for.
True.
Um, and so, but generally, I mean, there were the number of things that we did at PepsiCo that I did at PepsiCo, I did at Electrolux, but it all just depends on what you're trying to do. What problem are you solving?
Hmm.
What issues are you having? So there are some things that are similar, but other things were very different. But I just go back to, are we asking the right questions before we even start the research? Sometimes people come to us like the funny thing is when I first got to Electrolux, I had people say, "Hey, Brett, we need to do some focus groups," and I'm like, "No, you don't." And it's like they're starting with the methodology, and I'm like, "Well, let's talk about what problem are you trying to solve for? Let's talk about the question here that
Like I
we're
want to buy
that
some
we're
bananas.
yeah, I was like, let's figure out
Bananas
what
or
we're trying to do
potatoes.
here, and then there's also like who are the stakeholders and what's important to them. And
Mm.
there's just so much that we have to understand before we even get to methodology, that it's really, like I said, it's about solving problems and answering questions and developing solutions, not necessarily trying to do methodologies, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
So
no, no, I
so
get it.
but to
I'm
answer
with
your
you on that.
question, some things we did were similar, some things were different.
Mm.
It just kind of depended on the situation.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm 200% with you on that because that's how I tend to work. I mean, I'm not research is a means to an end for me.
Yeah.
It's not an end in itself, and that end is the business numbers, is the sales, is the revenue numbers or profitability, whichever way. Do
And
you
that's the
have,
historical problem with our industry, is that we think that the research is the end. It's not the means to the end. And that's where we've been tripped up.
I think that's, if you ask me, there's a concept. If you hear me, and I just can't work like that. I don't work like
Yeah.
that at all. And any interesting story you have on Pepsi during the Pepsi days? It has lots of brands. I mean, I'm not.
Oh yeah, I've got a lot of really great stories about Pepsi. One of the things that I ask people, I just was asking this in my class, my university class this semester, was we were talking about marketing and how you position things. And I said, how many of you think that Coke and Pepsi are the exact same thing? And they were like, no. And I said, how many of you think they're very different? And like the whole class raised their hand. I said, do you realize that it is almost the exact same product? I mean, Pepsi's a little bit sweeter than Coke. Other than
Mm,
that, it is exactly the same
mm,
thing. But
mm,
yet people don't look at Coke and Pepsi the same at all because
uh,
of the branding, because
mm,
of the marketing,
yeah,
because they have chosen very clearly really great insights to go after the consumer that they're going after. And so you can have essentially the exact same product, but viewed as completely different because of how you do your insights and your marketing and your branding. Um, and so I think one of the things that we did at PepsiCo that was really revolutionary at the time was the demand space work.
okay.
So one of the things one of the issues we had was at Frito-Lay, this is when I was at Frito-Lay, our biggest competitors for some of our big snack brands were our other snack brands. So like Doritos' biggest competitor was Cheetos, and Lay's biggest competitor was Tostitos. And these were all brands that we owned, you know? And so the problem became, we need to pull these brands apart that are so big and so powerful, and how do we pull them apart so they can stand alone? Because, PepsiCo is a house of brands, not a branded house like Apple is a branded house. Everything is Apple branded. Whereas PepsiCo, we have individual brands that live on their own and have their own identities and their own consumers and their own brand image and everything else. And so this whole thing about pulling apart those brands and seeing where are they different? What spaces should they occupy within the demand landscape? And at the
Yeah.
time, it was kind of revolutionary because not a lot of people were doing this. This was in the late 2000, 2009, 2010, somewhere around there is when we started to embark on this. And it revolutionized the way that we were doing marketing at the time. And then since then, you hear a lot more about demand space and demand driven work. And I'm not saying that it's because of us, but we were at the crest of the wave of that kind of work, that 17-ish, I don't know how many years ago. I mean, it was quite a while ago. And it changed our business. And so that's kind of the thinking. And I credit the people that we had there at Frito-Lay at the time, because it's easy to say, well, we're the big snack brand in the US, in North America for sure, and in other parts of the world. I mean, Lay's is the number one food brand in the world. And so, yeah, it'd be easy to just say, sure, we've got these massive multi-billion-dollar brands. We can just keep doing what we're doing and doing sales and whatever and coming up with things. But we just kept pushing, and it kept be like, okay, this is good, but we can be better. And how can we be better? And we started to, and this is where I always talk about how it's it's never just data and it's never just insights. They should always live together, because it was the data that led us to the predicament. And then we figured, okay, through insights, we need to figure out how we can do this. And so it was such an amazing project to be a part of from its inception. And as we worked through the issues with it, and then how do we operationalize this? How do we tell the story? How do we put it out there to the rest of the company so that they understand all the different brand directors were going to be affected by it and how we attacked? And it was going to affect every part of that company. And so it was not only a really great work into how do we go about figuring it out, but then how do we tell the story and operationalize it within the company. And
Yeah,
it
no,
was really a fascinating journey that we went on.
no, I get it. These days, demand spaces has become a lot more common. I mean, we get a lot of requests, and but I think in 2009, that's like 16 years ago. I think that was probably the beginning of this. I think not a lot many people talking about brands. At least I didn't care so
Mm-mm.
much at that time. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and so that's one of the questions that we asked is like, what really drives demand of Lay's, of Cheetos? That's what we were after, and then made sure that they were in their own unique spaces where we weren't overlapping with each other. And it's evolved since then, but it was to me it was one of the best examples I've been a part of that showed how wonderful the marriage of data analytics and really great consumer insights live together. And we weren't two separate teams that were trying to compete with each other. We worked together, and what resulted was just really some amazing work.
and personally, what area you're very fascinated or excited about? We talked about brand trackers, then there is obviously innovation, then there is a few other areas, and
Mhm.
I'm sure you worked across all. But where do you see your heart lies most?
You know, it, I could have answered that a number of different ways a year ago. Now I'm going to say it's AI.
Oh, really? Okay, I
Yes,
thought you would
I'm
say something against
fascinated by
AI.
it. Well, because we're using it, I can't really explain much more than this, but
Okay.
we use a lot of it at Walmart. And it doesn't mean that we have only 5 people doing insights in the whole company. We still have a big insights group, but I am so fascinated about what it can do and what it is doing for us. Because to me, AI is doing the work that I don't want to do or
Okay.
that is very difficult to do. It's analyzing large data sets. It's going in and scraping social media narratives, social narratives that are out there telling us what's driving the behaviors and the attitudes that we're measuring doing traditional consumer insights work. And it's so great and it's doing things that I am not capable of doing, or it would take me a long time to do it. It's doing it so quickly. And my philosophy has been, and I firmly believe this, is that if you think your job is just to do methodologies, just to analyze data, just to be, a methodologist or just to, build questionnaires, things like that, AI will probably take your job eventually. you know, but if you view yourself as being a true consumer advocate, and
Hmm.
if you really see yourself as a business leader, AI is going to be your best friend because it is doing the things that I would prefer not to do and that are highly difficult to do and complex. And it's freeing me up to do the things that I feel are very important. Because AI doesn't have empathy, it doesn't have emotion. In most cases it's just pulling from what already exists. And so let's put it to work doing what it's able to do really well right now. And then I'm able to focus on the other things that are really driving the business, that are really innovative, that are really making a difference. And AI is helping me do that. And so I'm using it so much now,
Okay.
and I'm embracing it, and I can't use it enough. And I'm constantly learning new ways that I can implement this in the work that we do. And then it simply allows me to focus on these other things.
So
So
bring
I am fascinated to see where we're going to go with this and what it can do. And like every day, I mean, it's giving me, I mean, not only, and again, there's a lot of learning involved. You have to learn how to do the right prompts and how to really tell it and direct it to do exactly what you need it to do. But when you figure that out and you go through the learning process with it, not only can he give you really great stuff, but then I can simply say, build me an infographic that encapsulates all of this. And I get it. I don't have to build the slides anymore. Build me a file that I can export into Excel that shows me this. And it's doing it for me. And so
Yeah.
it's cutting down on the time that I'm building slides and I'm putting reports together, that I'm doing all those things. And
Mm.
of course, the analyzing the data and the social narratives and all those other things. And it's letting me do the most important parts of my job.
When you're saying AI, I mean, you don't have to be specific about your job at all, but you're talking mostly LLMs or,
It's Gen AI, so it's things
okay.
like Gemini, it's things, we have licenses for these things that we use. So it's any of those things. I'm more of a fan of the Gemini 3 than I am of ChatGPT, but I mean it really doesn't matter. I mean, because if you learn if you learn the right prompts, if you really learn that more direction for AI is better than just one sentence or very general things. I'm even now using it in my personal life more than I ever did.
Mm.
Um, and just using it things to like help me run financial modeling on certain things that I'm considering doing. And
Mm.
it's really been amazing. And I think we should not be scared of it because it's going to allow if we're using it the right way, it's going to allow insights, I feel, to be much more effective because it's going to take off of our plate the monotonous work that takes a long time and a lot of man hours to do and allows us to do focus on the things that I feel are more important and the most important parts of our job.
I personally think that there is a lot of unemployment in this industry, consumer insight industry at the moment. I mean, I see that a lot of layoffs happening, and I've never seen junior level layoffs happening in the industry before.
Right.
And it's the first time I think last year I've heard about those happening because people at manager level or senior research executive levels were very precious and very difficult to find.
Mhm.
But now I think even those people are being laid off, and a lot of that is Gen AI. You can have a lot of work get done by the Gen AI, and so I'm not sure how well will it speak for the industry in terms of employability, though.
Yeah, and I think that we still don't know 100%, So I can say how I think it's amazing. I'm using it, we're
Mm.
using it, and it's allowing us to do other things. But you're right. I mean, we won't know for a few more years how
Mm.
it's really impacting. But what I would if I'm giving advice to younger people that want to get into this industry or that are starting their careers or early on,
Mm.
I would tell them to learn AI. I would because it's going to make what they do so much more effective. And granted, we just don't take its word for it. Like it does the work, but then we still check it and we still look at it
Mm.
and we don't just copy paste and go. We still have to train it to do certain things and make sure it's doing what we want to do. And if it's not, then we say, okay, do it this time with this instead of this, and so we're still having to monitor it, but it still takes a fraction of the time that we're doing and we're developing amazing things. And so even people that are my age that have been in the industry a while, when has resisting change ever worked in
It is.
history? It
And
never has.
it's
It never
AI is
has
a
throughout
wave.
history.
I think AI, as they call, is the fourth industrial revolution. You can't ignore it. If you ignore it, you're doomed.
Yeah, and so I talk to a lot of people that, are my age or a little older that have been in the industry for a while and they just are like, yeah, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to. And it's like, you got to adapt. You
Yeah.
have to learn how to evolve and we have to learn this because just
Mm.
ignoring it or resisting it isn't going to make it go away. It's it
They're
is
buying
it
death
is
nails for
coming.
themselves. I think they're buying
Yeah,
death
I mean
nails for
it
themselves.
not only is it coming, it's already here. And so don't resist it, learn it. And so that's what I mean. If you find yourself, if you're watching this and you think that your job is more about methods and questionnaires and data analytics, I would encourage you to really start to learn AI and learn how it can help you not only do that part of your job better, but be better at other parts of your job and show that you're proactive in understanding all of these different issues. Because a lot of times you can put a lot of data into it and it can find things and find connections that you hadn't even thought of. And so it can allow you to be more
True.
insightful and give better presentations and it
And
can allow
value.
you to
Mm.
and bring more value. That's the whole key. You're right. Hmm.
Have you tried your hands on synthetic data?
Have I tried what?
Synthetic data.
Synthetic. Yeah, I mean, I have. You mean just the reports that are put out?
No, no, the synthetic data where you're creating the AI personas and all the stuff, digital twins and all that. Have you gone into that space
Oh,
or?
no, we've not gotten into that.
Okay.
No, we're just using AI right now, and I'm using AI to just solve the issues that I was talking about to, help us analyze, help us scrape, help us develop, build those kinds of things. I have
Okay.
not explored that area yet.
Okay, I think that is another upcoming area which is coming, and at least I've seen a lot of VCs putting a lot of money behind those companies. So let's see how that goes.
Well, I'm sure I'll probably run into it sooner or later.
Yeah, yeah, you will, you will, you will, you will.
Yeah,
So I think I wanted to talk to you in detail about role of AI, but I think you've already kind of talked a lot about it, and it's good to see that you're so passionate. Now, a couple of closing questions I have is
sure.
you're a teacher, Brett, and you're a practitioner also. So, and you've talked in parts about it throughout the interview. But let's say if a new person is if I want to be, and I was teaching consumer insights as I told you that
Mhm.
if a new one, John wants to join the consumer insight, what do you think? What are the key elements, ingredients to success? You will build an elevator speech to that
Mhm.
newcomer, new child, or new adult or whatever.
Yeah. It's interesting. First of all, I would take a script writing class or a storytelling class
Okay,
or an improv class.
okay.
Learn how to think on your feet, learn how to tell great stories,
Mm,
learn how to do those types of things. So that's one thing. I would also take like a human psychology or a sociology class because so many great insights and so many massive brand mistakes have come because they don't understand humans. They don't understand people.
mm,
One of the assignments that I give in my class is to have them research and write an essay or something on a big brand misstep
mm,
and what the problem was. And in every case, it's because they didn't understand the consumer and they didn't understand that by doing this thing, the backlash that would come from it. And so we have to understand people because at the end of the day, consumers are humans. And so it's understanding how humans feel and how we live. And I would also take a basic neuroscience class to learn how the brain works and how we
mm,
make decisions and all those things. Because the more you can learn about people, the better you're going to be at consumer insights. And then you're going to learn the methodologies as you go. But I think, and this is the problem that I have with some of the master's degrees programs in the US and elsewhere that do masters in market research, is they focus too much on data analytics,
ah,
on methods, on
yeah,
things
the
like
hard
that. And
skills.
they
Yeah.
and they don't teach persuasion, influence, sociology, a human understanding, all these other things that we do every day in our lives, in our careers. And so I would say really understand humans as much as possible, and then bring that together the, with what you'll learn doing consumer insights and market research work. But then also part of it is learn about product development, learn about marketing, learn about these things. If you're just in consumer insights and you don't understand what you do fits in the entire business landscape, you're never really going to be effective and be persuasive because you don't understand business. And so there's so many things that I think could be taught better to prepare young consumer insights professionals to be more successful early on. Most of the ones that I've seen that have become successful had to learn all this on their own after they got into the industry. And,
Yeah.
to their
Sure.
credit, they've evolved as it's gone. It's not taught early on. And so I think we have to do a better job of training and teaching people, or when we hire junior level people, giving them these tools and having them go learn where they can start to get better at this. So yeah, it's a number of things, but that's really what I would encourage people who are trying to get into this industry. And in most cases, if you're working for a big brand, let's say, the agencies are doing most of the heavy lifting on the consumer insights work anyway. They're developing the questionnaires, they're coming up with the methodology, they're doing all of that. So if you're working on the corporate side, chances are you're not even going to need to understand all of that methodology stuff as much. You just, great agency partners that I work with, I don't go to them with methodologies. I tell them, here's my problem. Here's what I need to do. Help me solve this problem. And then they come back to me with how they think they can do it.
Mm.
Now,
No,
if you're going to work on the agency side, obviously you need to learn a lot more about methodologies and things like that. But even then, having all that other human understanding is going to make what you put together for your clients so much more impactful. And you're not just filling a 80-page deck with charts and graphs.
no, I think very valuable advice. This is all whatever you've said, I've learned on the job. I didn't, I mean,
Hmm.
anyway, I did not do master's in market research. I'm an economics grad, but a lot of it is I've learned on the job. And
Yeah.
if also it's taught in the schools, it can cut a lot of learning curve, I guess.
Hmm.
Now, last question, and that kind of a me talking, wearing an agency hat,
Sure.
how agencies can like, I mean, you work with some serious clients with serious budgets, like uh, how should they position with you to, I mean, not with you, I mean, just clients
Hmm.
like you to get more business or to become, to stay relevant in this turbulent time.
Yeah, and I've been on the agency side too. So I
I
have
saw that.
experience. So I
Yeah.
have experience with that. It's learning how to ask good questions. I can't tell you how many times I've been approached by agency people saying, "We've got this great tool that's going to really make your life better." I'm like, how do you know that? You
Mm,
you don't know me. You haven't asked me any questions. You don't know anything about my business, but yet you think you've got a tool that can help me. And again, it's going back to a methodology, or something, and
mm,
that's not what it is. So there's that. And the other thing too, to tell agencies is AI is no longer a differentiator. AI is a commodity now. And it's like you go to an insights conference now, every single booth has something about look at our AI. So
mm,
it's a commodity. It's just like segmentation. It's like conjoint. Everybody does it now. So don't think that you're unique because you have AI, and don't waste my time telling me how good your AI is. I don't need to know that. It's so much about, do you understand consumers? Do you understand that our goal, on the corporate side, is to make money, is to drive the business. It's that we have many stakeholders and that we have a lot of people we have to please. So how can you get me concise stories that will help me sell in what we're trying to do?
mm.
So it goes back to, learning great storytelling, learning how to put a good deck together, learning to find the conflict. And then I would also say, once you're having conversations with your corporate partners, push back on them if they're suggesting something that you don't think is a good idea. Be a consultant, be a valued partner where you're not just doing whatever they tell you to do. And then when it comes back, they blame you. They're never going to take the blame for it. So it's like really work in partnership to create something that is going to help the business. But yeah, but just from an intro standpoint, it is more about, I want to learn about your business. It's not, and don't give me a list of who you've worked with before, because that doesn't mean anything either. It's just like, I don't care about the list of big clients you've worked with. I don't care. You may have done one project for them that was a survey and you were like, oh yeah, we've done work for, whoever. And so it's really come in and show that our approach is that we understand you, we understand your business, we understand your consumer, and we are going to give you concise stories to sell in the business. I mean, that's what it's all about. Um, one of my another real quick Frito-Lay experience is that the CEO of Frito-Lay, when I started, is named Al Carey, and he was talking to a few of us in Insights, and he said, if you can't tell me your story in 3 slides, then you don't have a story. And it wasn't about jamming as much data on the 3 slides as possible, but it just was like, just I don't need to know everything you know. I just need to know what I need to know, kind of a thing. And so it's just learning how to be so concise with how you're telling your story to your corporate client that there is no question as to how they can now go implement that internally.
But how could a new agency stand out in this clutter for a client?
Well, first of all, they could start talking that way. Because like every agency now is just talking about methods or AI or something that's a commodity that everybody else does. Or even in an innovation house, we're really good at ideation. We're really good at coming up with ideas. Well, so are 5 other people that I know. So again, it's finding understanding what's a commodity. It's just like a brand. There's table stakes, things that are minimum requirement to even play in the game. And then there are those things that really make your brand relevant to a consumer. It's the same thing with agencies. I expect you to be able to do methods great. I expect you to have AI. I expect you to be able to do all those things.
Mm,
I mean, that's just the cost to play, to sit at the table,
mm,
to play the game. Now show me how you're different. Show me how you can really help me and make my life easier. That you're willing to just listen and talk and hear what I want rather than try to give me this hard sales pitch as to that you have something that's going to help me because you don't know that.
yeah. Yeah. I think, Brett, it has been very meaningful to talk to you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. These are fun conversations to have,
And
especially, I mean, we almost went a whole hour. That's awesome.
yeah, yeah, I think I we can I can go for a few more hours because there's a lot more. I think it's 20-25 years spent in this, and talking to a senior client like you is something which I always look for. Being an agency guy, I've never been on client side. I didn't want to go to client side. So, but pleasure talking to you, and
Yeah, thanks, Rajiv. Thanks for having me. Really, it's been such a pleasure to chat with you.
take care. Thank you once again. Bye.
Thank you.